In December 1865, Congress passed the 13th Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, guaranteeing the hard-won freedom of African slaves.
The 14th Amendment was adopted as one of the Reconstruction Amendments that intended to change the country that, in Abraham Lincoln's words, was half slave and half free.
States instituted poll taxes, literacy tests, and other requirements that disenfranchised Negroes. They passed Jim Crow laws, which imposed segregation and other restrictions on blacks. Plessy versus Ferguson. Plessy argued that the law infringed on his 14th Amendment right to equal protection. But the majority of justices disagreed.
As the armed forces mark 60 years of integration, veterans remember how they were recognized for their uniform, not their race.
On March 2, 1945, filed Mendez versus Westminster, a class action lawsuit against 4 Orange County school districts.
On May 17, 1954, there were signs. Some of the justices' wives showed up. Some clerks were tipped off.
The date was February 1st, 1960. The students' refusal to leave the counter launched an era of activism. The next day, 25 men and 4 women joined the sit-in.
They became known as the Little Rock Nine. The 1954 Supreme Court ruling on Brown versus the Board of Education found segregation of schools unconstitutional.
Southern Christian Leadership Conference. The name, so fitting for this organization, drawing strength from the black church. This mass movement was based on Christian beliefs of love and forgiveness.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
The Freedom Rides of 1961 were a simple but daring plan to put blacks and whites on commercial buses. They would deliberately violate the segregation laws.
50 years ago, these fields in California gave rise to the voices clamoring for farm workers' justice. They were the voices of Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta, the leaders in the fight for better pay and working conditions, which resulted in the creation of the United Farm Workers Union.
Saw my baby there. The words were fumbling a bit. She was. I have a dream. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal. I have a dream.
The 16th Street Baptist Church was a symbol of the civil rights movement in Birmingham. On a hazy Sunday morning in September of 1963, a noise shot through the church like a cannon. A bomb planted near the basement.
Stretched out on a long white table, so cold, so sweet.
On February 21st, 1965, as Malcolm spoke in New York City's Audubon Ballroom, members of the Nation of Islam opened fire, killing him in front of hundreds of his supporters.
I would rather die on the highways of Alabama than make a butchery of my conscience. I can remember that we must remain true to nonviolence. I'm asking everybody in the line. If you can't be nonviolent, don't get in it.
The Voting Rights Act of 1965 gave the federal government power to regulate state voting issues and laws. This has given African Americans and other minorities an opportunity to partake in American democracy.
Take the sheet off your face, boy.
All the people don't have freedom, all the people don't have justice, and all the people don't have power, so that means none of us do.
The Civil Rights Act of 1968. Included in the measure was a landmark open housing bill, which, when fully effective, would end discrimination in approximately 80% of all housing offered for rent or for sale in the United States.
Good evening. Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee.
That's all, folks.